Dynamic tube is an emulation of tube distortion. It really can add a lot of nice type of very soft type of distortion all the way to kind of breaking down the sound completely. This emulate as if the sound going through a tube, a vacuum tube, and vacuum tubes in the real world tends to warm up the sound, distort it, saturate it, and make everything sound a bit more warmer. So right here, first of all, we have the dry wet knob, mixing between the full effect to the dry signal, no effect at all. We have three types of tubes, all are modeled on real world tubes. A is a fairly clean tube where you can, with very low biases, won't create much distortion, and all the way to C, which is a very poor, kind of old, broken down tube, and B is somewhere in the middle of them. The output knob just decides what's the overall output of the device. Here we have the drive, which will decide how much of the signal is actually going to get into the tube itself. So you can drive it, you can push it more into the tube. And here, by the way, I have a loop just from the built-in library from BTools. So let's push the drive up. This is without, this with. As we can hear some of that tiny bit of distortion. The main control here is the bias, which will decide kind of the intensity of the tube. And if we go and push it really hard, the sound is going to break apart completely. Let's listen to that. Let's drive it. We're going to get different results. And different colors with each one of these tube types. The tone knob will decide what's the distortion, or the tube distortion is more focused on the high frequencies or the mid-low frequencies. Nice. And we also have a built-in envelope which we can be modulated positively or negatively, meaning that with higher volumes we'll hear more of the distortion, and we can also adjust how the envelope reacts over time with the attack and release. So now we can hear that mostly the kicks are getting completely distorted compared to the claps and snares, which are a bit lower volume. We can also invert it. So now we can hear the kick doesn't happen so much, doesn't get distorted, and the lower sounds get a bit more colored. This is kind of similar to an expansion effect. And the attack and release will decide how the envelope actually react to those sounds. Nice. And lastly, you can right-click on the title of the dynamic tube and you can turn on high quality, which will take a bit more CPU, but will help with any aliasing effect, especially on the high frequencies. Really great effect. If you want to add some color, some tone, some warmness to your sounds, you don't have to use it very to the extreme because it will break up the sound, but just a tiny bit, even with the dry wet knob, you can get some very nice colors.